Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Larry. Today I'm doing homemade bread, freestanding loaf, made with my own natural yeast starter. So if you want to see this process, keep watching. For starters, this is a pretty simple basic recipe that anyone should be able to do. It's not that hard to do. It may take a little bit of practice with the forming and rolling to get the loaves to stand up, and also with the ratio of ingredients, also known as the baker's percentages. So let's say for my recipe, I'm going to use 25 ounces by weight of flour. Well, that's considered like 100% for the baker's percentages, and the amount of water you need to add is give or take 60%. I use 56% for this recipe, so the dough stands up a little higher, but that's 60% of the weight of the flour. So the amount of water you add is the weight of the flour times 60%, and that's the weight of water that you need to add. Same thing with the salt. It's about 2% of the weight of the flour, and also for the fat or oil that you add is about 2% usually. So I'm going to use those in this recipe going forward, so keep watching. Alright, first thing you gotta do is get your yeast starter prepped. So this is my yeast starter. It's been in the fridge for a number of days. I need to warm it up and feed it before I can start to make bread. So that's the next step. Now I take the lid off. I'm going to remove about half of what's in here. There we go. Next, add about equal portions of flour and water. Here it's about 3.5 ounces of flour, followed by about 3.5 ounces of water. Then I stir it up, get it all mixed together, and then let it sit for up to 12 hours. And let it grow. Then I repeat the process about every 12 hours until the yeast is very active, which, depending on how old the yeast is and how long it's been in the fridge, could take anywhere from just a day to a couple days. Now the yeast is ready to go here, so what I'm going to do is take about 5 ounces by weight out of here and weigh it by weight, of course, for 5 ounces in this little cup here. There we go. Alright, so it's a little over 5 ounces. I misjudged, but it's okay, it's close enough. Now I take that yeast starter and put it in the bowl. Get it all in there. Along with weighed out 7.5 ounces of bread flour, along with 7.5 ounces of dechlorinated water, and then stir that together, and what we end up with is what's called a sponge. And so what we're doing is that we're increasing the starter threefold from its initial small size to 3 times its size with this sponge, and we're going to let this rest overnight until the morning. We'll put the remainder of the ingredients in, some additional flour, some more water, salt, oil, things like that. So I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap or a towel if you prefer that, and we're going to let that sit overnight. It's the next morning now, so let's take away this plastic wrap. And you can see here it's the sponge. This is why they call it a sponge. You can see all the little bubbles and activity that occurred overnight. This is actually this is why they call it a sponge. It looks like a spongy dough. Now I'm going to add about 15 ounces by weight of bread flour, along with about a half an ounce by weight of oil. This is olive oil I'm using here. Some sort of fat really is what you need in there. About half an ounce of salt, and that's the basics. That's all you need for a basic bread. But sometimes you want to add extras. Like in this case, I want to add a little bit of sugar in there for a different type of bread crumb texture. So that's my recipe, and let's get it to the stand mixer. And one final ingredient before it goes in, about 4 more ounces of warm dechlorinated water. And that gets the hydration ratio exactly the way I want it for this bread, which is about 56%. So let's get this thing on to the stand mixer and get it mixing. Now after a few minutes of this, you want to check on the dough to see if it's ready, if it's kneaded well enough. So what you got to do is get a little ball out of there, kind of try to stretch out a sheet and see how well it stretches. So what I got here is, I just pull this out like this, I stretch it. That's pretty good. Maybe another minute. Alright, let's try this dough. Make sure it's nice and stretchable. So roll it in a little ball, flatten it, stretch it, and let's see where we can get here. Pull this out. Yep, that's pretty good. So let's get this thing out of the stand mixer and form it into a ball. Now I have the dough out of the bowl, and what I did here was form it into a nice little round taut ball, mainly by forming it a couple times like this and squishing the back together, and then kind of turn it around and around and around to kind of stretch the surface a little bit just to get it started. And I tighten up the bottom, and now I'm going to add some oil to my bowl. Take my ball, kind of roll it around in there, and cover it again for several hours while it rises. Now it's been a few hours. Pull this back, and it has risen about double in size. So I'm going to pull this thing out of here and start forming. Now it's time to form. So what I'm going to do is kind of flatten it out, and I'm going to start folding it into thirds. Over and flatten it a little bit. Outside and flatten it a little bit. And you can start forming it into more of a tighter ball as well. And the goal here is to try to stretch the outer skin of the dough so it will hold its shape better when you roll this up. So I'm going to add a little flour here. It's getting a little sticky. And I'm going to do it one more time. So what I'm going to do is fold it in thirds on top of each other. Fold it in half over itself again. And then it's getting a little stiff now. So what I'm going to do then is just try to flatten it out. I'm going to let it rest until it relaxes a bit first. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it one more time, and what I want to do is I'm going to roll this thing up into a roll that I'm going to fit into this banneton here. So I'm going to just go ahead and start rolling it with the idea of trying to keep the outer skin kind of somewhat taut as I roll it, so it stretches like this a little bit. And I'm going to push in the seams so it sticks to itself. I'm going to take the ends and kind of pull them in. Take the ends, kind of roll them in like this, pinch them in, squish them so they stick together. Now this is the seam side. I'm going to go ahead and sort of stretch it a little bit, form it a little bit longer if I can to better match my banneton, which is right here. Now this Banneton is great. It's optional. You don't need it. You can roll a freestanding loaf without one. However, my experience and frustration over the past few years trying this is you'll have inconsistent shaping results, and sometimes the dough will pancake a lot when you don't want it to. So put a little flour in so it doesn't stick, right? And came undone a little bit. Okay, and then it's about the right size. Throw it in my Banneton with a little flour so it doesn't stick. Sprinkle a little flour on top so it doesn't stick to my cover. And then I'm going to put my plastic wrap right back on top. The same sheet of plastic wrap I've been using all along since the beginning of the video. And I'm going to let that sit there and rise for a couple more hours probably. It's been a little over 2 hours, and now you can see that it's risen pretty well there. So I'm going to go ahead and preheat my oven now. Alright, so while the oven's heating up, I wanted to explain what I'm going to do next here with the oven. When the oven preheats, I have a bottle here, a little spray bottle. It's just water that I'm going to spray in the oven. And I also might even throw in, or alongside this, a little bowl full of water in the bottom of the oven. And that's going to help create a steamy environment that helps the bread rise during the first 10 minutes. And there in the bottom of my oven is the pan with a little bit of water. It's heating up along with a upside down half tray for baking the bread on. Next thing I'm going to do now is turn my dough over onto my peel. What I got here is just some parchment paper and a peel. And I know you can use cornmeal and flour and all that stuff to do this, but I don't like the mess it makes. So instead, I just use a piece of parchment paper, turn my Banneton over, and then I take it off. Comes right off, hopefully. If not, just give it a little jiggle. And there's my dough. Nicely formed. Just like that. Now what I'm going to do is cut some slices in it with a sorted bread knife. And you can go the other way too if you wanted to. Just like that. I don't know if this matters or not, but I like to give it a little quick spray with some of my water in the bottle and get it right into the oven. And then put it in the oven at 450 degrees or so. Take this, down like that, close it up. Another thing I'd like to do is take the spray bottle and spray on the inside of the oven. Close it really quick and let that cook for about 10 minutes, and we'll check on it then. It's been 10 minutes, and as you can see, it's risen up to probably about its maximum height already. So from about this point on, this is as high as it's going to rise. So bake this for another 25 minutes at least, maybe up to 30 more minutes, and it'll be ready to pull out. Alright, it's been 25 minutes since the last check-in. Let's take a look here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that looks nice and done, so it's coming off. Let's just move it onto here. And there it is, folks. Nicely cooked loaf of bread. Alright, let's slice this up here. It's cooled off for a good hour or two now. It's room temperature, so it's going to be easier to cut into. I'm going to cut off the end here. I'm going to eat that too. I'm not going to waste that, but definitely want to get a better example here of what we're going to eat. So let me get that in focus. And here we go. So as you can see, nice crumb. Really tasty looking. So there you go. It's that easy, folks. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out other videos on my YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe.